Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Martin. Welcome to another African Meetup. I have here as my co-host Rachel. Hi, Rachel. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Martin. How are you?
Pretty,
Good
pretty.
morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
All right. We excited to have you on our May edition of the Meetup. We have a lot packed for you today to share with you. Just a minute. Let me share my screen. Actually, Richard, can you share our agenda screen from the slides I shared with you?
All right, let me share.
One thing I like to do on this meetup is I like to know where you are watching from. So please let us know in the chat. Yeah, Andrea, you can share your screen. Let us know in the chat where you are watching from. I'm from Nigeria currently. I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, and looking forward to learn all of our um, repeat viewers here on GitHub African Mid.
Martin, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great, great, great. Go ahead.
Perfect. So can you move to the next slide?
All right.
Yeah, perfect. So basically, here at GitHub, I'm an account executive, and I talk to developers, customers all the time, and I help people with GitHub technologies. I'm also a crypto enthusiast and a rookie investor. So definitely check me out on Twitter and see all the things I do over there. And Richard, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Martin. My name is Namara Rachel. I'm a software developer at Ensibuko. Ensibuko is a fintech company based in Uganda, in Africa. I also happen to be a women in tech network global ambassador. I'm really so glad to meet everyone here, and you're all welcome. Let's learn from one another.
Perfect. Next,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
And basically today we'll be going through some, GitHub news, and also we have three speakers lined up for you today. We'll be talking Zack. We'll be talking about InnerSource in government, and Anita. Anita has been here several times. Anita will be talking about how you leverage GitHub Actions in open source management. Catherine Kiiru, I think it's her first time here. She'll be talking through, tech hiring season, and red flags to watch out as you apply for jobs. And then after that, we'll have a networking a session. We'll log out of YouTube and go on Zoom, and we'll be there to answer any questions that you may have, and just to make sure that you connect with the speakers and you can connect with us and the rest of the team, the GitHub team that are helping to bring you these meetups. So next slide. All right, let's start with that. So basically, we've had a lot of shifts this past couple of weeks. Next slide. And if you go to our blog page, you would see that you can now, list your upcoming events on GitHub. If you have a meetup coming, if you have topics that are relevant to GitHub, you can publish it on our community page, and we'll try as much as we can to support you there. And if you have and if you're promoting your event, we also recommend that you have a code of conduct so that we know how to support you there. And next slide after that. And another thing that we want to also mention is that, I know most of you that have been coming to this meetup, we've had so many presentations on Dependabot, and there's a new feature now where you can preview the dependencies that you are importing into your code right before you build you build them into your code base. So the way Dependabot used to work before, after you've built your application, you then see the dependencies that you had within your application. But now you can actually preview what dependencies you have in a given packet before you consume them. So, and obviously you guys should already know that Dependabot helps you to keep your dependencies up to date, and you can automate that process. So as you build your open source projects, as you contribute to open source your open source projects, Dependabot preview will help you to be more secure in your development practices and make sure that you are using the right standards for all your development. All right. Next, please. And also, this is just to remind you that if you, I'm sure most of you must have heard, please let me know in the chat if you've heard about GitHub Advanced Security. It's freely available for open source work. So if you're working on open source, you have an open source project, GitHub Advanced Security is available. And we also want to hear back from you. We are continuing to improve the product. So if you have a feedback, you can just use the code, the barcode to give us feedback and let us know if you detect any exploits on the product, and we are more than happy to get this feedback from you. All right, next. All right, so Richard.
All right. Oh yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martin. So right now we have amazing speakers who are lined up, who are going to talk to us today evening or today morning. So our first speaker is called Zack Koppert. He's a senior DevOps engineer at GitHub. He helps customers adopt to GitHub and maybe get familiar with GitHub transformation, DevOps transformation. So today he's going to talk to us about implementing InnerSource in government organizations. Zack, you're welcome. Yeah, the platform is yours. Take us through.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Let me go ahead and get my slides up. All right, just 1 second here. All right, there we go. So yeah, thank you all for having me on this. I'm excited to talk about InnerSource and specifically InnerSource in government. So just to make sure that we get all of the, I guess, terms out there first before we get started. If you're not familiar with InnerSource, what I'm referring to when I talk about InnerSource is really, it is a way of applying the open source way of working inside of an organization, so inside of a government or a company or anything like that. And by the open source way of working, I just mean lots of sharing, lots of software reuse, and anyone can contribute type of model. And so open source obviously isn't appropriate for every project that everyone works on. Sometimes it's best that something stays within an organization. And so for that, there's InnerSource. It allows you to leverage different groups of people across the entire organization, but then still to work on it together and get that benefit of collaboration. I'm not sure about you folks, but I know that when I've worked on projects in collaboration with somebody else, they always turn out better. Two minds are better than one. So let's dive into InnerSource in government then. So a lot of people ask the question, like, is InnerSource in government even possible? Like, InnerSource is all about sharing and collaboration, and government can, from sort of this militaristic model of command and control, sort of try and control information only where it needs to be. And so how do you collaborate, but also like control what people are working on? And so that it can be a bit of a conflict sometimes. I do want to reassure you, though, that based on my experience working with GitHub customers and governments, and particularly large governments and agencies in the U.S., is more my experience. But it is possible to do InnerSource in government, and you don't just have to take my word for it either. I'll supply some examples. So if we look at examples of InnerSource in government, so there's things working at the small scale, and then there's also things working at a very large, like intergovernment agency scale. So on the small scale, I can tell you about the VA Notify project, and the VA is the Department of Veterans Affairs in the U.S. It's a U.S. agency, and they have built this notification system. They actually pulled in an open source project and made it InnerSource, and modified it specifically just for the VA. But essentially, they have multiple different products, right? So they've got a website, they've got an app, they've got back-end health services systems and databases, and a lot of these different systems all need the ability to be able to notify their customer, the veterans in this case. And so instead of building 12 different solutions, one for each product that all work differently, they decided to consolidate and just build one notification platform that actually is usable in all those different areas. So they're InnerSourcing there. And that's used across all of that US agency. So that's an example of relatively small scale compared to the size of the US government. A way for them to sort of save time and money and effort by reusing and InnerSourcing. So what about the large scale? Like, how big can this get before it falls apart? Well, the US Platform 1 would be an example, and that's the logo there on the right. It's a project that is actually used by multiple government agencies. And it's a DevSecOps software factory. So if you're not familiar with that term, it just means it's about putting software development, software security, and software operations kind of all into one platform. And so that different agencies within the US government can just pick up this software factory platform and use it to be able to develop, secure, and deploy their code. So so the scale is massive, and you start to notice too when you get to this larger scale that there's a community around it. There's training that goes with it. So it's not just like the code is being shared, but there's actually a community built around the code, just like happens in open source, where you start to get to know the people that are working on it, and you can ask people questions, and makes the software actually usable or reusable in this case. So it's also worth noting that that there are some projects that exist for government reuse on the open source side. It's not all just InnerSource kept within the organization. And so examples of that would be like code.gov has a software library of all of the open source projects used across every agency. So that's a pretty interesting one. Go ahead and go to the next slide here. Okay. So if we take a look first at some of the potential benefits, like why would you actually InnerSource? Then I've listed out a couple here. So we've got engineering efficiency, economic impact, community, and transparency. So on the efficiency one, we'll tackle that first, and economic impact together, because those are really tied. A Gallup poll in 2009 found that Americans perceived 50% of their government funding. The American government charges taxes, the taxes go to the government, and that's like their revenue, right? And so they perceived that 50% of that revenue that they were paying the government just kind of gets wasted. And so everybody has a different idea of like what's waste and what's not. But in 2021, if we keep that in our minds, just 50% of government funding goes to waste as perceived by the people. In 2021, the U.S. budgeted $92.2 billion for IT spending, so computers and software development and all this stuff. And so if you think about those numbers are sort of staggering, right? Like if you can create a more efficient government and then 50%, there's a large opportunity to be able to save a lot of money, which could lead to significant economic impact. If you look at this for smaller countries too, they're looking to do more with less funding because of their relative size, and so it's even more important in the small organizations to be able to increase the efficiency here. So that's a big pull for most folks to be able to start looking at InnerSourcing seriously and say, oh, is this something that we should do? So a common source of this waste, though, when we're talking about like government waste on the IT side, is rework. So like that example of the notification system I gave, they would have had to spend, if the notification system is going to be used in 5 different places, and it was going to be all developed differently because maybe they weren't aware that everyone needed it, then, in terms of the waste there, they would have had to spend 5 times as much as they did to be able to develop it. So normally in a software organization in the private sector, just regular businesses, they have software architects that are responsible for identifying these opportunities across the entire business to sort of consolidate things. Like, oh, it looks like all these projects need, this one piece. And so we'll develop it once and use it everywhere. But in governments, sometimes the way that they get sectioned off into different ministries or agencies, then there's no one person from at the software level who has visibility into all those different areas. And so because they don't have the visibility to oversee all those areas, then stuff gets missed. And the opportunity for InnerSource isn't really recognized. So one really important way that you can help battle this in government where there's no visibility to see what's going on is to create a searchable catalog of the existing software. So if you're in a government agency and you're developing software, you can contribute your piece of software to this internal website, this catalog of reusable existing solutions, so that when people are developing new things, they can go there and look first and say, has this already been done somewhere else? Most folks already do this with open source. if I'm, as a developer, get assigned to develop a website, first I go look at all the open source components that I can use so I don't have to write them myself. And I use that to build my website. Well, we're adding in another step before or after the open source, but before we go and build it ourselves, to also look for existing solutions in InnerSource. So that's, again, increasing our engineering efficiency and economic impact. But let's take a look at the community piece, actually. So there's this poetic nature to governments practicing community in their software and building communities around pieces of software, because governments are meant to govern bodies of people, right? Communities. That's a part of what they do. They also have the duties to protect and financial stability and all of these things, but part of it is really managing the community. And so there's a lot of expertise in government in managing communities and how to do that peacefully and efficiently. And so we can utilize some of that knowledge that government folks have in managing communities and direct that into software communities and start to build communities around these reusable pieces to make them more reusable. And so, in the same way that sort of that democracy allows for the organization of folks with similar interests to organize, InnerSource communities on the other side are going to enable this for government. So a couple of examples of that that I've seen personally in working with different government agencies is a community, or sometimes they're called communities of practice, around security and specifically software security. So what that looks like, if you're not familiar with like a community of practice, it's a model where you've got people from all over the organization getting together and talking about a specific interest area, like security. They maybe have a Slack channel or Microsoft Teams channel, some form of digital communication that they can communicate asynchronously. And then they also have like a synchronous component where monthly they get on a phone call with everyone, or a Zoom meeting or anything, and they sort of have this like shared repository in GitHub where they can all enter in their best practices about whatever the topic is. So in this case, software security. I've also seen communities of practice around InnerSource. People who are trying to InnerSource in government, helping other folks who have already done it, or things like that. Software architecture is another big one. Again, we talked about the visibility problem, that you don't have visibility into all these different areas. So then when software architects come together out of these different groups and start to chat with one another about what they're working on and what they're building in their respective teams, then sharing across those teams can happen a whole lot easier. So the community piece is a really important benefit there. And then let's take a look at the last step, and that's going to be a step towards transparency. So the more that you're InnerSourcing and open sourcing within the government, within any organization, it can provide a fantastic amount of transparency into what the code actually does, what the processes actually are, and what technologies are actually being used. So if, let's say, one team is struggling with their use of React to be able to build websites, but another team is very experienced in that, and they don't normally talk, if we add some transparency into that by allowing them to share their code, well, then we're able to make those connections and identify that and build those relationships. So government has just traditionally been plagued by an over-reliance on the principle of least privilege. And just what that means from a security standpoint is only give people permission to do only what they need to do for their job, and nothing more. Otherwise, it creates a security risk. And while that's true, and it's a good principle to live by, it can be overdone. So it's a difficult culture to change in a lot of governments, to make this balanced choice of what's really needed for your everyday job. And as our world grows more and more interconnected, that seems to expand, and that can make security folks a little bit nervous. And rightfully so. So there's a balance that we want to strike between making everything transparent and making everything open, as well as keeping the appropriate things locked down and closed, but not too much. So you can consider how this might be applied to InnerSource as well, right? So some things are going to be shared maybe just between specific groups. In the US, sometimes they share things only between the military groups of the government and not the other half. And so, one thing to consider is to decide for your government or for your organization about sort of a decision framework for like, how do we make decisions about what's appropriate to share and what's not? And if you already have some sort of decision tree or matrix to be able to decide that, well, is your software included in that, and what's appropriate to share in your software? So I really enjoy this comic, and I normally call it "Some Things Never Change." So if you look on the right-hand side, there's these folks that are trying to transport some rocks across the distance, and they've got some, if you notice, they've got square wheels on their little cart there. And you can imagine how bumpy and difficult that might be to drag through the dirt. And then there's this guy over here on the left who's got some round wheels, and it looks like he's offering them, hey, you want to try these instead? But their response is almost hilarious, right? So they say, no, thanks, we're too busy. Like, we have a lot of work to do. It's very hard work. There's no time to upgrade to these round wheels and try and get those working. Or no, our leaders won't let us. You can imagine some of the excuses that they might have. But it's obvious to all of us as people outside of this process and people outside of doing the hard work every day and not looking up, that it's really silly. If they just took the short-term cost of upgrading their wheels, they would have significant long-term benefits of being able to get around faster and not have the work be as hard. So this is a model, a foil, an image really of what happens with InnerSource a lot, and especially InnerSource in government, is that we sort of propose, hey, we have this way of sharing code, reusable code, and we'd like to sort of upgrade the way that you do software. And many folks in government, especially very hardworking folks, are like, oh, no, we don't have time to change things out or change the way that we do things. We've got to get this done. We've got deadlines and all these things. And so it's important to recognize some of these issues. And the thing that I normally do is I try and turn these obstacles that they bring up into motivators, right? So if there's not enough time, well, there's actually, if you take a second and look at it, there's not enough time for you to waste continuing doing things the same way, because you'll gain so much time by this upgrade that it'll really pay off. Or there's no leadership buy-in. No, leaders don't want more transparency or something like that. They just want us to keep doing things the way that we have been. Well, turn that into an opportunity to convince leadership and to be the one to convince them of this good idea. And then when it pays off, the leadership looks back at you and says, "Oh, wow, that was a really good idea. You're kind of a smart person." So that's nice. And then there's a number of other things that I've heard too, like, oh, well, we've got everyone has different GitHubs, and so we can't share things. Well, we can overcome that. We can consolidate GitHub organizations or add outside collaborators and things like that. So my point is there's solutions to all of these things. We'll go ahead and hit the next one. All right. So in terms of not just theory of like what often happens in governments and in terms of InnerSource and how they use them, but some actual actionable takeaways of what I tell people, this is what you should go do if you think that InnerSource, it has some potential impact in your organization, in your government. And so presenting a future state, this is really about inspiring folks with your vision for a more transparent government, for a more open government, for a more efficient government, whatever that headline goal of that it makes InnerSource attractive to you. That should be the thing that drives you to inspire others in your organization to, hey, in the future, we could be more this efficient or whatever if we try out this InnerSource thing. And that'll give folks motivation to put in the effort to try and change the way that they work. Which just as humans, we don't like to change the way that we work. We like habits and patterns, and so it's sort of sometimes against our nature, but we just need to revive that spark of curiosity to try things out, which can sometimes get worked out of our lives. So need to keep that alive. But also we want to outline tangible next steps. So if somebody is got some excitement around InnerSource about the benefits, they've presented that idea to other folks and they're catching on, then there sort of becomes this like, well, what do we do next, right? What are the next steps? Like, what are some concrete things that we can do so that motivated folks can now actually contribute to accomplishing this? It's effectively like crowdsourcing the effort. So sometimes those next steps look like, okay, we're going to create a repository where everybody can put in a list of what they're working on so that we can just see and have visibility into what other folks are working on. Sometimes that looks like changing the permissions on your GitHub repo and saying, okay, this is, instead of going to be private, it's going to be open internally. And so, yeah, just listing those out. You also want to align to your agency's goals and strategies. So it oftentimes, if you try and start InnerSource or anything like that, then if the leadership is trying to go this direction of like, what we're really focusing on right now is more software features and delivering them faster. So we can't do InnerSource because we don't have enough time. We have to go faster. You need to make sure that you present how InnerSource can actually help accomplish the goals that the leadership is trying to do, so that you're not working against each other. Hopefully that makes sense. And then find champions. And what I mean by that is just find people that you can help understand the idea of InnerSource, how the sharing leads to benefits, and what those benefits could really do for the organization. Once people understand that and believe in it, then those people are what I call champions. And so you need those folks in the leadership, you need them in the software developers, you need them like literally anywhere you can find them, as many as you can. The more, the better. And then, so the last two things too is just documenting your progress. So sometimes it can get very difficult to try and change the way an organization works, and it takes a lot of time, and leadership can change in between those times. And so sometimes a new leader comes in and is like, what have you guys even been working on with this whole InnerSource thing? Like, it doesn't seem like it's working, or it doesn't seem like it's big enough, or it should have worked by now, right? And so one really important thing is just to write down all of the things that have been a win in terms of creating transparency, InnerSourcing, and things like that. And so that when new folks come in and they ask about this, they don't have to have the whole history. They can see written down, oh, well, these are the things that have changed. We used to do things that way. It was much slower. Now we do it this way and it's faster. And so they can say, oh, well, maybe we should keep going with this and keep doing this way, not go back to the old way. So that can be really encouraging for folks, especially new folks to the organization. And then the last one is just to measure based on impact targets. I'll break that down a little bit. So if you are in an organization that is data-driven or wants to make decisions based off of sort of recorded information, so it proves, for example, that something is working, you want to make sure that you measure the right thing. So in InnerSource, if you're saying, oh, let's do this InnerSource thing, and the leadership says, okay, well, you can do that. Just make sure that, you are InnerSourcing 10 new projects a week. Okay, well, that's a choice, one thing to measure, but it's not necessarily a good thing to measure, because you can imagine maybe at the beginning that works really well, but then you start to run out of projects. So should we shut everything down? No, that's not the right idea. And so you want to make sure that you're measuring the right thing at the right time. Maybe for the first year, creating new InnerSource projects is a good idea to measure. And to say, well, if we did X number of projects, then that's a success. But then maybe the second year, it looks more like, okay, we don't need more projects. We need higher quality projects, or we need more people working on them, or we need, a better way to communicate between different teams, different things like that, because the needs change over time, and it's just important to keep that in mind. So, thank you though for the time, me being able to share my experience here. It's really great to be able to sort of take all of this information of different government folks that I've worked in one place and hopefully help other people kind of not make the same mistakes, or guide them better on how to do an InnerSource practice, in your organization. So with that, I will go ahead and stop screen sharing here.
All right, thank you, Zack. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed everything about InnerSource. Thank you for the knowledge. Thank you for the wisdom you shared with us. Martin, do you have
Zack.
anything to say?
Oh yeah, I really love the analogy of the cartoons with like the round wheels on the square wheels. That was hilarious. It's just how we are stuck in our old ways, and we don't want to change, and we're like too busy, heads down, doing the wrong things over and over again. So that's great. Don't reinvent the wheel. Reuse things that you have within your organization. I think that's one of the key takeaway. Thank you, Zack. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So, Rachel, you want to introduce the next speaker?
All right. So our next speaker is Anita, Ihuman from Nigeria. She's a front developer. She actually apparently enjoys speaking, like technical blogging, public speaking. So right now she's actually enjoying everything about this. I think Anita was able to record her presentation. She's not going to be presenting live. Everyone help me welcome Anita, and I can't wait to see or hear what she has to share with us. So thank you.
All right.
Another thing, as we wait for her presentation, if anyone has the question, the Q&A for her, she's around, so you
Hello
can ask
everyone,
it.
my name is Anita.
Another thing, as we wait for
I am a software developer,
her
technical
presentation,
blogger,
if
open
anyone
source
has
enthusiast, and a cat
the
lover. And today I'll
question,
be
the
speaking on the
Q&A
topic
for her,
leveraging
she's
GitHub
around, so
Actions
you
for
can ask
resource
it.
management. My name is Anita.
Another
First
thing,
and foremost, let's define what GitHub Actions are. GitHub Actions is an API that is responsible for cause and effect. GitHub Actions help you to build, test, and deploy your applications. They can also be used to automate, customize, and execute your software development workflow right in your repositories on your GitHub. So, GitHub provides GitHub Action alongside with other cool features such as the code review tool and an issue tracker that are perfect for managing and maintaining your open source project. So, how do GitHub Actions work, you may ask? GitHub Actions are initiated by GitHub events such as making a push to GitHub, making a pull, creating an issue, creating a pull request, dropping a comment on an already existing issue, and joining or welcoming new members of the joining or welcoming new contributors, running a project, and so many other more effects. And all these effects initiate and trigger GitHub actions. So, so what do GitHub actions have to do with open source? You may be asking. It is true that in a typical open source project, there are always diverse ideas and contributions coming in from various contributors to that particular project. But then it is always crucial and to ensure that the software code base is carefully and continuously tracked and managed. And when you, in a case where you want to manually manage and maintain the code base of particular software, you get you notice that by the time you're done going through the pull requests on the different, let's say your project has about five repositories, and you have to like, check each one after the other to see if there was an issue created by a new contributor or comments made to take on an issue. By the time you're done going through five repositories, you get burned out at the end of the day because you actually have to do this manually, and it's so time consuming as well. So, what is the problem with actually manually tracking open source issues? In a case where you have to take on this single-handedly, maintaining a project single-handedly without the aid of any tools, you'd have you always experience situations of still and unattended issues. Either the issues have been fixed but then have not been closed because nobody actually bothered to close them, or the the issues have been created but then nobody attended to them and it's taking like forever to actually attend to them. I recall an experience I had one time with an open source project where I wanted to make a contribution. Then I observed that the issues were dating back to 2 years to 3 years, and at first I thought it was funny, but of course it's actually funny to see that issues are that long. But it made me wonder and ask myself like lots of questions like what happened that these issues are still here till now? Is it that the maintainers have not taken note of this particular issues, or they don't know that these issues are still open? And some of them, when you make a comment, they'll tell you that these issues have been fixed. So why is it still open? And these are some of the problems that you have when you actually manually have to like maintain the project repository. And it wastes the maintainer's time. As a maintainer, you have to like manually go through it, which is like time consuming, and it gets exhausting at the end of the day. You get slow response. You see that there's always slow response to comments and issues that are already created. Now, as a contributor, you drop a comment on a particular issue, and then it takes about a week before the maintainer of that particular project gets back to you and tells you whether you should go on and fix it or the issue has already been tackled. Now, I had an encounter similar to this one, and I came across an open source issue as I always explore through GitHub check issues. So I came across an open source issue that I thought I was actually going to like tackle, like it's easy because it's just a documentation issue. And then I commented that I want to take on this issue, and it took about 2 to 3 days before the maintainer actually assigned that issue to me. Normally, I would definitely lose my patience and then get tired and just abandon it. But I actually fixed that particular issue. But then the fact that it took a long time for them to attend to me was not a good impression as a maintainer to a contributor. And also, reviewing and closing pull requests takes time. So by the time I was done fixing that issue, it took another 2 days before my pull request was reviewed, and then it now pointed out that I actually had to make another correction on what I had already fixed. You can imagine how that would be, because it took like how many days before you attended to me. So imagine I make another correction. How many days again before you come back to review the correction I already made? Get these things become very, very discouraging from new contributors to that particular project. And also you ignore new contributors because they're like, because the open source organization probably has about 24 repositories or 40 repositories, depending on the size of that particular project. It's going to take a long time before you attend to every single contributor that drops a comment. It's going to take a long time before you manually go through each and every repository, checking for contributors that need help. And at the end of the day, you neglect most of the contributors that are not very familiar with working with open source organizations. And also, there are no standard contributing guide. There are no standards for contributing. So you can, most organizations always stipulate a particular pattern which their contributions should go. Now, in a case where somebody does not actually go through this pattern, then their pull request don't get merged. So, but then when you don't have, when you're manually maintaining your project, there'll be very there are very high chances that the standards for your particular project are not going to be maintained because not everybody reads through the contribution guide. Some persons just ignore the contribution guide and go through go through with fixing a particular issue. So it's very hard to maintain standards for that particular project repository. And also the project lacks consistency because some persons make contributions and then they miss out on this. Let's say you want your project to always have an icon that is attached to it once you're creating a pull request. Most contributors that don't actually read through the documents or the documents of that particular repository might skip out that particular icon. And you wouldn't notice because you have over 20 pull requests to review in a particular day. You might just skip that particular one and there's like no consistency in the project code base. So where does GitHub Action come in, you'll be asking. Now, when you automate GitHub Action for your open source repository, you get notified via Slack or your email once an event is triggered. So once somebody makes a pull request or once somebody drops a comment on an issue, as a maintainer of that particular project, you are aware that yes, somebody just dropped a comment. Let me go and review it. Immediately, you attend to the person, and that is one of things that GitHub Action takes care of in an open source organization. And also it sets standards for the contributors. So I recently I contributed to layer 5 organization last year, and that was like my very first time hearing about a sign off. And as a newbie to open source, I was like, what is sign off is happening? Whenever I explained it to somebody, I probably wasn't putting it in the right words, I guess so. But whenever I explained that I was expected to do this particular thing, I was expected to sign up. Someone like, I've never signed up when creating a pull request before. You should go and check it again. And I kept getting errors whenever I create a pull request. I kept getting errors until someone in the community directed me to the contributing guide that says you have to sign off before your pull request is merged. So the GitHub action there restricts any contribution that is not signed off. So this actually creates a particular standard for your repositories. If this is not done, then your pull request don't get merged, and also it helps to maintain consistency. And take it to a case of the image compressing action. So if you want your repositories to have a particular size of graphics or anything that is related to an image, but then they should have a particular size, you can always automate your GitHub actions in a way that if a push is made and the image size is bigger than this, then the GitHub action should help to compress the image sizes. This is always going to help to maintain consistency across the project code base. And also, automating GitHub actions saves a lot of time for the developers and for you as a project maintainer. So you don't always have to search each project one after the other, checking for some of these effects that have been triggered that you were not aware about. Yeah. So you just get notified immediately, which saves you a lot of time to do other tasks on that project. And also, it appreciates new contributors. Now, whenever I go to an open source project and I make a contribution and the Slack bot, the Git bot tells me, thank you for contributing to this project, it always makes me so happy. I always feel so happy. And I feel like that's how most of persons contributing to open source projects feel, because the little appreciation you give them, it serves as an encouragement for them to come back and make another contribution. So when you automate your GitHub actions in a way that it appreciates the members of the community, It keeps the community look welcoming for the contributors. Also, it closes stale issues. You can always automate a GitHub action in a way that if an issue extends or exceeds like 2 weeks or 1 month or 3 months, whatever the time frame you choose may be, whenever it exceeds 6 months after it's been opened, either it is created, either it has been fixed or it has not been fixed, then the issue should be closed and then move to scale issues. Yeah, this is another feature that GitHub Action can always take care of, and then keeps the project active. GitHub Action always keeps the project active because once a contributor comes to the project and sees that, yeah, the last issue that was created was yesterday and it was fixed yet today this morning and it has been merged, I'll be wild. I'm always wild. And you're like, okay, this community is like very active and the maintainers are up to date with the contributors. This is always very encouraging for most new contributors to the organization. And there are so many other things that GitHub Action allows you to like benefit from, but I'll leave it at that. So what makes GitHub Action stand out of numerous CI/CD tools? Let's look at that. Using GitHub Action has like so many benefits, but what makes it stand out is that GitHub Action is free. It has a great free plan, so you don't actually have to pay for it as an open source organization or as an open source project. You don't have to pay. It is accessible to everyone, and also GitHub Actions are built in GitHub. So once if your project is already existing on GitHub, you don't have to move it to an external site to actually deploy or to test it. Everything can be done on GitHub, making it very convenient and stress free. And it has multiple CI templates. If you go through the GitHub marketplace, you will see that there are so many GitHub action templates. There's so many different serving different purposes. So you can always explore and search the templates that suits the purpose that you actually want it to fulfill, and include it in your code without any stress. And another great feature is you are totally and completely in charge. So you can always customize the workflow to your taste, to your desired taste, whenever and however you want. Or you can always find out new templates on the GitHub marketplace. And so, what are the benefits of GitHub Action to open source projects? GitHub, the GitHub Action you probably want already exists. That's for one. So there are like so many actions that there's so many GitHub Action templates that are available on GitHub Marketplace. So all you have to do is just get the code and put it in your code base and you're good to go. You don't always have to write it all over again. Whatever your feature that you're looking for, somebody must have coded and tested it and kept it open source it on GitHub Marketplace, waiting for you to integrate it into your project. And it is it makes everything automated. So in a way that you get updated on every event that is triggered on that particular project. Like I mentioned earlier, you can always automate your actions in a way that you get notified via Slack or email, which makes everything less of a hassle for you as a project maintainer or as a project manager. And it eases stress, which makes GitHub Action makes code review, branch management, and issue tracking a lot more easier for the project maintainers. And also it makes it sets a way of making projects order arranged in an orderly manner and also maintains consistency across the project code base. Another benefit is GitHub Action does not select a computer language, so it's available for most programming languages. So whatever programming language it is that your project runs on, GitHub Action probably has a template for that. So it doesn't actually stick to just one programming language, let's say Python or just JavaScript. It's available for most programming languages, and you can use it um, for most operating systems. So whether you're using Windows or you're using Mac or Ubuntu, whatever it is that you're using, whatever operating system that you run your code on, GitHub Action is most definitely available on it. And you can use continuous deployment to other cloud platforms like Google, AWS, or whatever clouding platform it is that your project uses to use. You can always use the continuous deployment for it. And one another very good benefit of GitHub Action is you are totally and completely in charge of your project. So whatever it is that you want, if you feel like an action does not play well enough for you, you can always make adjustments to it, and then you can always customize your own actions and then put it out there in the marketplace also for people to like review. So GitHub Action makes you completely and totally in charge of your project. So that brings us to the end of this talk, and then thank you so much for your time and thank you for listening. You can connect with me via GitHub or Twitter, and I'm actually ready to take any questions right now if you have for me. Thank you for listening. Hello, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Anita. Anita has been one of our favorite presenters here on the Meetup. Thank you for that presentation. I did drop some GitHub actions on the chats on YouTube, so make sure you go take a look at some of those actions, and you can browse through the marketplace website to reuse or create more actions. So even building GitHub actions will be a way for you to differentiate yourself as an upcoming a developer. So thank you so much, Anita. And Rachel, can you introduce our next speaker?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Anita. That was really so deep. That was an interesting talk about GitHub Actions. And I always feel so glad every time I see like women in tech, people, girls who code, women in tech like me. I'm really so happy to have you here. So our next speaker, we are going to have Catherine Kiiru. She's from Hashnode. She's going to take us through the tech hiring session. She will tell us about the red flags to watch out as you apply for jobs. I think there's a tech jobs. So, Catherine, you're most welcome. Platform is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here. My name is Catherine Kiiru, and I will be talking about job red flags to look out for as you apply for these opportunities. So, as much as opportunities continue to grow within the tech job market, it's just as important for you to scrutinize these job ads so that you can make sure you're getting the best offers for your skills. Some companies have been known to ride this kind of growth to advertise for jobs that they also do not fully understand, and they even have unreasonable expectations. So, knowing these job red flags will protect you from being overworked, working in underpaying jobs, and roles that do not contribute to your growth. Additionally, you will also gain confidence in your skills and bargaining power when you learn how to read between these lines. So, about a bit about me, I'm a technical writer, I'm a front end developer, and a digital marketing specialist. So, just to get started, Some of these red flags to look out for is a job description that overuses buzzwords. So these are non-descriptive words that do not actually convey the purpose of the job or the responsibilities that you will actually do within the company. So some of these buzzwords, someone will talk about we are a fast-growing, disruptive startup, or be ready to work in an intense environment, or we are looking for a growth hacker marketer, or we need someone who will hit the ground running. So this kind of words are simply feelers. They don't describe exactly what you'll be doing. They sound important, but they're actually not conveying much about the job description. However, some companies tend to lean into this kind of descriptions, because a company that insists on the fact that they're a fast-growing, disruptive startup, what exactly have they disrupted? They're fast-growing. Does that mean that they're leading within their market? So some of these statements that they use to describe the job that you're applying for, they may look as if they're that important. However, if you do not have the actual numbers to back up such a statement, they do not add value to a job description. So the other problem about companies that overuse these buzzwords is the company may not fully understand their product, their customers, and the impact the product has in the market. So, for example, someone might say that they are a fast-growing, disruptive startup. What exactly have they disrupted? Have they disrupted a whole new market? Are they leading in terms of market share? Is their product the most downloaded product? Is it that their product has the highest number of website visitors? So using such descriptions might make it look like the company is making major moves in the market, but in real sense, they're probably not doing that. And so the problem with such statements is that you might join a company and be expected to build or to grow your customer base in the shortest amount of time, even if it's unrealistic to the work that should be done. So be careful with companies that tend to lean in on this kind of non-descriptive words to describe their product or to describe their market or to describe whatever service that they have to offer. So another red flag to look out for is a vague job description. So a vague job description suggests that the employer does not understand the role and they lack structured goals, making it harder for you to meet expectations and also to demonstrate the value that you add to the company. So a clear job description should state the role that you will be playing in the team or in the organization overall, what you will be working on or what you will be developing, what you're responsible for, whom you'll be working with, and the teams that you will be collaborating with. So a company should be able to convey this kind of information in a very clear and straightforward way so that you get a picture of what exactly you will be contributing to the organization. The other red flag to look out for, and this is a major one, a company that has frequent layoffs and restructurings. So the challenge with working for a company that is known to, have frequent cycles of restructurings is that you will get into an environment that is unstable. Supervisors are changed every now and then. Your job structure is changed every now and then. Job responsibilities change, and even the work environment is not conducive for your growth. So how do you know a company that is notorious for constantly frequent layoffs and restructurings? You can check out the reviews that they get about their company. You can check out Glassdoor or Indeed to get a picture of what people feel and think about the company. Some companies are publicly listed, so you can look at their financial reports, press releases. Most times they tend to cover this kind of changes about the company within their company reports. So it's important for you to know if a company conduct frequent layoffs and restructurings, so that you know also how long are you going to dedicate time in that company. Will you be able to work for 1 year? Will you be able to work for 2 years? And how much of that time will it contribute to your growth? So this is an important red flag to look out for. The other red flag to be careful about is a company that has a work hard, quote unquote, a work hard and play hard attitude, meaning that they expect you to work hard and stretch yourself, giving more work, and also spend more time building a product or whatever job responsibilities that you have gotten. However, will they pay you? Will they compensate you just as much as you have worked? So most companies tend to expect you to stretch yourself. However, when it comes to compensating you for that much work, it becomes a question of, they will play around with whether you need to be compensated for the much work that you have done. So working long hours on occasion is okay, because sometimes you have tight deadlines, or you want to work long hours out of choice. However, a healthy work-life balance should be the norm in a company rather than the exception. So to gauge the kind of work-life balance culture a company has, during your interview, you can ask your interviewer if they expect you to be on call after official working hours and on weekends. And if you're expected to work after hours and on weekends, are they going to pay you overtime for that time? The other thing you can ask to gauge the kind of culture they have is you can ask them, what is the average time that employees work on a daily basis? So you might find that they say, employees here work about 10 hours, and that's the average time that they clock in on a daily basis. So that gives you a picture of, can you work in such an environment? Let's say you're the type of person who likes to clock in and clock out exactly as what your contract states. So it's important for you to know this kind of details, so that you don't walk into an environment where they expect you to work beyond the official hours. They expect you to work beyond official hours, and that is not what you thought you were going to get. So it's important for you to ask this kind of questions during your interview. The other red flag to look out for is, and this is also an important one, a prolonged interview process. So a reasonable amount of time for any well-functioning company is between 22 days and 60 days, depending on the industry. So any lengthy interview process is a major red flag, because one, it shows you that the company is quite bureaucratic. Decisions take a long time to be made. The other reason why this is a red flag is it shows you that they are quite indecisive. An interview process that takes more than 2 months is unnecessary. At most, it should be 60 days, depending on the kind of industry that you are working in. So to protect yourself from working in companies that already show their inefficient processes at the point of interviews, make sure to Google, make sure to research to know within the industry that you're interviewing, what is the average interview time. So if, let's say, it's 22 days and they are getting back to you after 60 days, that shows you that that company is quite indecisive, or they are disorganized, or they are unable to make decisions quickly. So the other red flag to look out for is a job description that has unrealistic expectations, especially within the tech community. You'll find a job description that's talking about, we need someone who is a front-end and back-end developer. We need someone who owns the whole software development process. That might be unrealistic, because if you expect one person to own the whole software development process, are they being given the necessary resources to make sure that that process is completed in good time. If they expect a full end and a back end developer all in one, are they also paying you for your worth? So this is important for you to look out for, because we've had cases where companies will talk about this is an entry level job that requires 5 years experience. That isn't realistic. Or jobs that require 6 years experience in a specific language, yet that language or framework was released 5 years ago. So that shows you also that in as much as they have high expectations, they do not fully understand exactly what they're interviewing for. So this is another red flag to look out for. So that brings me to the end of red flags to look out for. These are not all the red flags that are available there. Whenever you go for an interview, make sure to just do your due process to understand the company that you're working for, the expectations that they have of you for that particular role, and also the kind of feedback they get from customers and even former employees, so that you gauge the kind of culture that you are working in. So on the other hand, we have the green flags. What are the good things to look out for in a job description? What does a good job description look like? So one of the things to look out for is that they give a straightforward summary of what the company does, what they need, and what they need for that role. So they give it's a very straightforward summary. It's not too colorful. It doesn't have a lot of buzzwords. They go straight to the point and they tell you that this is what the company does. This is the size of this is the market that we are working in, and this is the role that we need you to fill. The other thing to look out for is a straightforward breakdown of job responsibilities, expectations, and reporting lines. So a good job description will tell you exactly what you're working on, not in vague terms. So let's say you are joining a company to be a front-end developer. They will state the kind of frameworks that you'll be working with, the kind of languages that you'll be working with, what they expect from you, and also the reporting lines. Will you be reporting to the tech lead? Will you be reporting to the product manager? So they will be very clear on that. The other good thing to look out for is they request for reasonable qualifications that are commensurate with their responsibilities. So if they expect a 7 years experience, the responsibilities also match the kind of qualifications they are requesting for. The other thing to look out for, and this is a bonus, companies that list benefits and perks that they offer. So a company that lists paid time off, growth opportunities available, medical cover, paid incentives. This is a company that understands that they're trying to attract the best talent. And they also understand that a job description, a job ad is a two-way street. It is not just a company telling you why we need you and telling you the responsibilities that you will be doing. They will tell you the responsibilities they have, what they expect, and also what you can expect from them, because they understand that it is a mutually beneficial relationship. And finally, the other thing to look out for is a job description that does not include non-descriptive qualities. Right? These are things like, a company that is asking for people who are determined, or someone who is a self-starter, a hardworking person. These traits do not describe much, right? Anyone can be hardworking. Anyone who is applying for a job is a self-starter. So a wise recruiter will try as much as possible to leave out phrases that do not describe the job, and instead try to focus on selling the opportunity to the best talent. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that these tips will help you as you apply for opportunities out there, and also as you go on to your interview process. Always try to research as much as possible, and of course be prepared and have all the information that you need, so that you can get the best offers for your skills. So thank you for your time, and I wish you a good day and a good evening ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was great. I loved. I was having so much fun in the chat. um, you know, one thing I want to say is that software is eating up the world, and
Um, Thank you
as a
so much, Catherine.
yeah,
Honestly, that was really an interesting conversations, and maybe some of the things as people we overlook when we are looking for jobs, and which are
mhm,
actually really important. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Yeah, Matt, do you have something to say?
yeah. I was just saying that software engineers are incredibly important for the whole world right now. Someone said a long time ago that software is eating up the world. So if you work in the IT space, if you're a software engineer, your skill set is extremely valuable. So you shouldn't be getting an entry level job with 5 years of experience, right? So if you see a job description that is talking about you getting an entry level dev job and you have 5 years of experience, that's a red flag. So you should definitely learn about the prevailing compensation in your market, whether you're in Kenya or Nigeria or in Egypt. Make sure you understand what you're worth, and make sure you get what you're worth, and don't fall for the tricks. You shouldn't be doing all the job, doing back end, front end, and doing all kind of software development, and you're getting paid as a junior dev. So definitely understand your worth and make sure you get paid for your work. You are very very important. GitHub is here to make sure that you have the resources you need. There's a lot of almost everything we have on GitHub is available for free to open source software development. So really really thank you, Catherine, and I want to thank all the other speakers that gave us a lot of wisdom today. Anita, Zack, and Catherine, thank you, every one of you guys. And so um, we do this meetups every month. So there'll be another meetup in June. And after that, we want to go quickly into Zoom. If you have any questions for any of the speakers that we have here, follow the link uh, on. Oh yeah, you can. If you also want to be a speaker for any of this meetup, you can send your proposal, what you want to talk about, what topics on relating to any GitHub technology you want to talk about, or how you use GitHub. Send your proposal to that website on the screen, and you can also send an email to us. I think that's it for that, and we'll be jumping on Zoom right now. So see you on the other side. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Martin.